Hi, everyone, and welcome. We're so glad to have you here today for our very first online workshop, Dify 101. So this series is going to be super beginner friendly, and we will bring you some of the basic concepts, and later we will chain them together for a complete workflow. So today we will be building an AI-powered email automation system from the scratch. And it's always great to see people from the community. So feel free to say hi in the chat box. Tell us where you are at the moment and what's your name. So my name is Anne. And as there are more people joining us today, so everyone feel free to say hi, and we will give everyone an extra minute to get settled. So at the same time, we would love to introduce our speakers today. Yep. Hi, Shani.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Shani. I'll be walking you through how to build one of your first probably AI workflows through Dify. I'm so excited to be here. I've been at Dify for about a year, and I'm just really eager to show people how they can integrate workflows into their daily lives and how we can make whatever you're doing better.
Yeah. So my name is Anne, and I will be your host today. And at the same time, I'm the content marketing manager working at Dify. So, Shani, are you ready to share the tutorial thing?
Yeah, let's get started.
Yep. But before that, I will do some more introduction and some FAQs before we all officially get started. So I'll like move you to the backstage and give you an extra minute before we finally make everything happen. Mhm. Okay. So, what we will be covering today, here's a quick look of our agenda. So, the first is greetings and introduction. So, there will be a brief introduction for you to understand what is Dify. And then Shani will bring you some core concepts and tutorials today that helps you to bring the email automation system that I just mentioned. And last but not least, there will be live Q&A and some sneak peek of our latest features and events. And before we begin, there will be Q&A sessions where you can post them directly in the YouTube chat in that part. And we promise we will take care as much as possible. And if you have any questions during the tutorial session, me and my colleague will also help you in the chat box session. And as for the recording, yes, the session is being recorded, and the full replay will be sent to you with an exclusive link via email after we finish. And the tutorial part will be available on YouTube channel later. So, what is Dify? I'm not sure if everyone has used it or not, but that's not a problem. Dify is an all-in-one platform for the entire AI application lifecycle. It takes you from the first idea all the way to a production-ready app. As you can see, you can build chatbot, agent, content generation, chat flow, and workflow, which we will be building today. And actually, you can build chatbots and agents, design them in Dify Studio with drag and drops, and connect your own data with our RAG pipeline. You can test everything and scale it up and put it into the final production. Well, actually, you don't need to read every single feature on the slide because we'll be showing you this slide, and you will experience everything in our webinar. So what we will be building today is an email automation system. We will try to build a workflow that can automatically read and classify the income emails, and then it can help find answers, draft a reply with the help of LLM, and last but not least, we will test and debug to make everything is ready. So without further ado, we will dive into our tutorial today. But before that, please go to www.dify.ai because we'll be using Dify Cloud today for our tutorial. And after visiting the website, you can click Get Started button in the upper right corner. Yep. So I will bring Shani back to the stage where she will be the tutorial professor. Hi, Shani.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to get started. I'll give you a couple seconds just to log into your Dify account if you haven't already. In addition, there'll be a Google Drive sent out with some extra files that you might want to download. That'll be very helpful during our tutorial today. So if you
Yeah.
have any issues setting things up, please say something in the chat before we get started.
Yeah. So Shani, I will leave the stage to you. And everyone, I will also be your companion during the tutorial because me and my colleague will help you make everything smoothly in the chat box. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave your comments or in the chat box, and we will be helpful by that time. So Shani, I'll leave the stage to you.
Thanks so much, Anne. Again, today we're going to take this very step by step. So this is assuming you don't have any prior knowledge or usage of Diffy, as well as no programming background. If there are any issues or any questions, please speak up. We're here to help, and we know that this can be a difficult thing to learn, especially if you're a beginner. So let's get started. If anyone is having issues logging into Diffy, please speak now or forever hold your peace. I don't see any comments, and we'll point them out if there is any, but I am already logged into my Diffy account. This should be the first screen that you see once logging into Diffy Cloud. The first thing that we do want to do is set up our AI models. So what you're going to do is go ahead and press your profile icon in this upper right-hand corner. Once you press that, you should be able to go to your settings option and choose a model provider to install. Go ahead and press model provider. As you can see, I have already installed OpenAI. If you haven't already, there should be an install button. If you just press that, Diffy offers 200 free tokens for new users of Diffy, so you don't have to worry about connecting any API key for now. However, if you do use up these tokens in the future, or you can think of it as a limited number of uses or calls to an LLM. LLM stands for large language model, by the way. Just think of it as like ChatGPT, Anthropic, any model you use for generative AI. Diffy does offer these 200 free credits first. If this is your first time using Diffy, that should not be a problem. If this is not your first time and you have used up all of your credits, feel free to use the API link that we provided in the chat. I believe Anne will be sending that through. So I'll give you a couple seconds just to install the model provider. Today we'll be sticking with OpenAI, so go ahead and install this model. If there are any issues, feel free to speak up. I'll give a couple seconds in case anyone is struggling with that. Okay, great. I think everyone seems to be on track. Next thing we want to do is when we're working with an AI workflow, especially if we're a company, we have very specific knowledge based on what our company is. Today, we'll be pretending that we're working for the company Acme. Acme is a company that delivers and ships products and works with a bunch of different types of products and offers different services because of that. So what we want to do in this instance is that if we want to respond to a customer, we need the information specifically about our company. In this case, if we wanted to create a workflow with Diffy, in order to give the LLMs access to such knowledge, we do need to create something called a knowledge base. You can think of this as you're feeding the LLM information that is going to be used in order to create like an accurate response to the customers that you want to respond to. So again, going back to Diffy's main page after you're logging in, you'll see a couple of tabs on the top here. You see Explore, Studio, Knowledge, and Tools. What we want to go to is the knowledge base. Is everyone able to navigate to that? Okay, great. What we want to do is create a knowledge base. So right in the left, you see a Create Knowledge Base button. Go ahead and press that. And there are some files that you do want to download from the Google Drive link that we're going to send out. I believe Anne has sent it out already. Go ahead and go to that link, and you'll see this folder called Diffy Email Temp. This is just what I named the folder. Go ahead and download that onto your computer. Couple seconds for you to do that. Once you're able to download it, you can just go ahead and upload the entire folder into this knowledge base. What this is going to act as is a reference for your AI models to use in order to extract important information and respond to customers adequately. For example, Acme provides tracking information to their customers through a link. And that is only known if we upload it in our knowledge base, because an LLM like GPT will not know that Acme does offer this feature. So that's the importance of a knowledge base. Meanwhile, is everyone able to do that? Once that you've configured this knowledge base, I'm gonna go ahead and just upload my own. But although I've already created mine, we're just gonna upload all of these. So the files that I have in the folder are the company facts, the customer service templates, which are just email response templates that the AI model can reference in response to a customer, the policy of Acme, and the product descriptions of Acme's products in order just to respond to any specific inquiries. What we're going to do is press next. Here we can basically hone our knowledge base to be more specific. In this use case, we're trying to keep it pretty simple, so we don't need to do anything different for chunk settings or index methods, but you can think of these as more specific ways to polish your knowledge base in order to generate the amount of detail that you want. Again, don't need this right now just because what we're doing with this workflow is pretty straightforward. So we're just going to scroll to the very bottom and press Save and Process. I already saved and processed a knowledge base, but you can also name your knowledge base once you save and process it, and give it a couple seconds to load. I'm going to name it Acme. Actually, go to the knowledge base first, and then I'm going to just go back to edit, and I'm going to name the knowledge base like Acme company files. So we're going to just go ahead and save that. And is everyone following along all right? As you can see, all of our files are uploaded and they're all available to be accessed by any LLM when we do create our workflows. So far, no questions? Okay, great, perfect. Let's move on then. Let's go back to our knowledge base, and you can see the company files that I just named in our knowledge base. What we're going to do next is actually get started with our workflow. Before we do that, however, I do want to allow time for any questions you have about knowledge base or about setting up the model providers, if anyone does have any. I don't seem to see any. Feel free to ask at any time. However, for now, we'll just move on to actually getting started with our workflow. Great. So what we're going to do next is go to the studio. Studio is kind of where the magic happens in Dify. This is where we create projects that we want to do in order to make something more efficient or to bring some benefit to whatever you're working on, whether that be your company or just your daily life. So today we're going to create an app from blank, and then we're going to create a workflow. An agentic flow is essentially a pipeline that you can invent for automation or to make something easier to do. So chat flow is when you want to have like more of a chatbot style. Think ChatGPT, you're asking questions about a specific thing. If I wanted like a customer service bot for Acme, I'd use a chat flow. However, today we're going to stick to workflow because we're focusing on email automation. Next thing you want to do is give your app a nice name in order to reference in your studio. So I'm going to just say Acme email automation. And then for description, I don't feel the need to write any description right now. However, when you do create more workflows, it might be helpful to write like, oh, this is what this workflow is going to do. I think the title, the name of the app is pretty self-explanatory. So we're just going to press create. Great. You start with what seems like a blank canvas. What this is the start node. The start node is kind of exactly what it sounds like, in that the start node will be what prompts the user of this workflow. So think like what exactly you want to take in order to put something out. In this case, what we want to take in is the email of a customer with whatever concern they have about Acme. Before we actually get started inputting things into the start node, I do just want to put in all the nodes into our workflow just to have them out in this canvas. How you add a node, you're always provided the start node. However, if you want to add different nodes, you go ahead and press this button, Add Node. Today, the first node that we're going to add is a question classifier node. The question classifier does a pretty important job, especially when you want specific information extracted. The question classifier node will take an input from whatever node comes before it, and then basically determine, oh, what class that we create does this belong to? I'll elaborate a little bit more about this once we actually get to it, but let's add another node first. So we're going to add the next node, which we're going to add knowledge retrieval. Knowledge retrieval will be the thing that we're going to use to actually access the knowledge base that we uploaded. I'll elaborate more about this once we actually get to it when creating our workflow, but after the knowledge retrieval, we're going to add, it's probably one of the most recognizable nodes, the LLM node. What the LLM node does is configure some sort of output that we actually want. So think that the question classifier determines what we want to extract. The knowledge retrieval node takes the knowledge from our knowledge base in order to give it to the LLM node to actually write a response for an email. Lastly, to wrap our entire workflow up, we're going to add the end node. What the end node does is very similar to what you would expect, like a LLM to output. The end node will just generate the final result of this entire workflow. Before we start diving into like these very complicated and seemingly intense nodes, let's just go back to the very start and see what we can do here. For every node that you do work with, you are free to name the node whatever you'd like. So for start node, maybe I want to name it like input customer email. So that tells me directly what happens in this node. This node will prompt the user of this workflow to input a customer email that maybe they get from Acme customer support. So this is like a customer requesting some sort of information from Acme. The next thing you'll notice is the input fields. Input fields is basically a place where you can say, oh, this is what I expect in the start node. So what do you want the user of this workflow to give this workflow in order for it to work? The three things that I can think of in this circumstance is the subject of the email we're looking at, the name of the person writing this email, and the body of the email. So we're just going to add a couple of variables. If you don't know what a variable is, no worries at all. A variable you can think of is similar to how you would reference a variable in math. It's a representation of something. So when we add a variable, I'm going to add, let's say I want the customer's name to be a variable in order to just determine who are we talking to in this case. So I'm going to name this variable customer name. The field type is what you expect this variable to be. So in this case, short text, I believe, is pretty adequate to represent a customer name because usually customers' names are not over 48 characters. As you can see, there are a couple of options of what inputs to expect. I think short text is very suitable for customer name. String seems to be a little bit confusing. It might seem unintuitive, but a string in programming is just, you can think of it as characters. So a string is characters and then numbers. Boolean, you don't have to pay attention to this, but think of it as like true, false. And then the rest are not too important for now. You can explore a little bit more about the different field types if you decided to build more complicated workflows. So let's just add the customer name. Some emails, however, maybe don't have the customer's name. Maybe the customer didn't leave their email. So I'm just going to uncheck the required box. What we're going to do is press save. And as you can see, the input field for one of the, for the start node, one of them will be the customer's name. Second thing would be maybe like the subject of the email. So subject email. For the subject of the email, maybe that the subject can be a little bit longer than 48 characters. I'll estimate maybe it's like 100 characters maximum. Still a short text, but a little bit longer than just the name of a person. Again, we don't really necessarily need a subject email, so I'm going to uncheck the required box and press save. As you can see, it shows up in our input field yet again. Now, the most important part of this workflow is what exactly is the email that we're looking at. So we're going to add in one last input field. This input field is probably going to be a little bit longer than the other two, since emails can be pretty lengthy depending on what the customer is asking. So let's just write, it's a paragraph. A paragraph with maximum length of, if you really want to give some leeway, like 5,000. We know that most emails will not be 5,000 words long, but just in case, we'll say the max length of this input is 5,000 characters. And I'm going to name the variable customer email body. Great. This I will make required because without an email to look at, how are we supposed to generate a response? So we can leave this one as required and press save. Now we have 3 variables in our input field. Before moving on to the next node, does anyone have any questions? It's looking pretty good in the chat, so I'll move on to our next thing, which is just question classifier. Now, what exactly is question classifier? Question classifier pretty much does exactly what it sounds like. This is a sort of routing control to what knowledge we're trying to pull out of our knowledge base. It's a safety measure to prevent our LLM from using the wrong information or giving like product description info when the question is about refunds or returns. So this is like a fail-safe check for us, just to pull out the right information. Let's take a look at our question classifier node. The automatic model for me is ChatGPT 4o Mini, which is great in this instance. If you press the different models, there are a bunch that you can choose from depending on what your demands are for this workflow. This workflow is very straightforward, so GPT 4o Mini is suitable. For more complex or detail-oriented workflows, if you're solving complex math equations and dealing with maybe code, that you might want to use like a more intense model. However, in this case, we can just leave GPT 4o Mini. The parameters are a little bit like the knowledge-based parameters that you're previously looking at. In this case, we don't need to edit anything. This is for more advanced model usage. So for now, we can just leave things as the presets. We once again see the input variables for the question classifier. Now, if we press this, there seems to be no variables available. Now, why is that? It's a great question. Well, the issue with question classifier is that right now it's not connected to anything. Because of this, we don't have any input that we can use. Where is our input from? Our input is actually from the start node. So in order for a workflow to quote unquote flow, we do need to connect the nodes. If you hover over the start node or the input customer email, you see this plus button on the very right, and you see a plus button on the left of the question classifier. In order just to connect the variables with these 2 nodes, all you're going to do is left click and drag. Very great interface. Diffy makes it very user-friendly to connect these 2 nodes. And after I connected that, if you now press the input variables, you see the different inputs potentially from the starter node. So in this case, what do we want to classify? We want to classify what questions are the customer email body asking, which is why our input variable is going to be the customer email body from our starter node. Okay, that looks great. Now that that's in there, we have to distinguish what exactly our different classes are. Today, we're going to use 4 classes. If you go ahead and reference the workflow copy and paste information sheet, we have the classes inputted in there, but there are 4 major classes that we're going to do. We're going to do class 1, which is shipping and delivering issues. So any emails mentioning late packages, shipping delays, tracking issues, delivery status, and some keywords could be like hasn't arrived, tracking number missing, delayed shipment, etc. The second class will be the refund, return, and exchange class. So any emails asking about refunds, returns, or if there's an issue with their order that they want something to be sent back. The third class will be product details, compatibility, and availability. So Acme's product detail information will be used in this case. Emails asking about product details, usage, how tall the product is it incompatible with this other product, what is included in this product. And then the last class will be when we can't really classify it into any of the other 3. It's the general / other questions class. So emails that are more generic or unclear that don't follow the categories above. So what we're going to do now is just copy paste these descriptions. So I'm going to go into my workflow copy paste info and copy class 1 into the class 1 box. So for topic name, shipping and delivery issues, and then mention some of the specifics about what exactly this class entails. We're going to do the same thing for class 2. And if we want to add more classes, we just press add class. For class 3, let's copy and paste the product details. And then for class 4, we're going to copy and paste the general/other category. Okay, this looks great. Now our question classifier has the input variable, which is our customer email, and then the different classes that it could potentially sort this email into. Perfect. If you want to scroll down just a little bit, you see this category called output variables. Output variables is what exactly this node will return and what we'll see down the line of our workflow. Once we connect the knowledge retrieval node, for example, the knowledge retrieval node will be able to access this output variable class name. So let's go ahead and make that connection. We need to make it for every single class. So for every class outputted, it'll connect straight into the knowledge retrieval node. So once we click and drag that 4 times, you can see that these are all connected. Wiggle it around a little bit, make sure that it's there, and we can move on to our next node. Before we do, are there any questions about the question classifier node? Again, you can name it something else, maybe like determine email question. Yes, so far so good. I think everyone's following along pretty well, so I'll just move on to the next node. What our next node is what I think is the most fun node. It's our knowledge retrieval, so we get to work with what we previously uploaded into our knowledge base. What exactly is a query variable? Well, a query variable, you can think of it as something like our inputs from the previous nodes. Our query variable is what do we want to achieve from the knowledge retrieval? So in this case, that would be the class name that we determined in the previous node. After uploading that, we need to connect our actual knowledge base that we previously created. This is a super simple process made by Dify. So all you have to do is add this plus button and then select your reference knowledge. So what I named it previously was acme comp files. So I'm just gonna add that. And you could add multiple knowledge bases as well, but I'm just gonna stick to the one. Feel free to add that. And then that should just be able to use this query variable to extract all the information about this class from the company's files. Once again, let's take a look at what exactly the knowledge retrieval node outputs. What will be outputted is the result array, which is, you can think of it like a container of just information that it just retrieved from our knowledge base. What do we exactly do with this information? Well, we actually have to write the email. One of our most popular nodes is the, of course, LLM node. Let's move on to that. First thing you want to do is just connect the knowledge retrieval to the LLM node. So far, does anyone have any questions about knowledge retrieval? I know that node was pretty quick, but it was a very simple process of connecting what we previously uploaded. Okay, no questions? Yay, the exciting part now starts. Our LLM node will do most of what you can imagine is the brunt work. Diffy's backend handles a lot of the LLM usage or model usage in the previous 2 nodes. However, the LLM node is our opportunity to actually tell the LLM exactly what to do and what we want to get out of it. So again, our model is just the automated GPT-4o mini. In this case, works perfectly great to me. What do we want to be our context? So what is the background information that we want to feed our LLM to have it output an accurate response? And what that information is what we've been working on for the past 2 nodes. It's the knowledge that we retrieved based on the class of the email that we inputted in our start. So what exactly do we want our context to be? We want our context to be the results of the knowledge retrieval node. So you can imagine, like, if an email is about, when is my shipment going to arrive? We classify that into the shipping delivery issues class. And then using that class, we extract the information from our knowledge base. So the 4 files that we previously uploaded. And then we take all that information extracted and we put it into an LLM in order to generate an adequate response. What is more of a free you can use however you want to prompt the system. This gives you a lot of liberty to say, oh, how do you want your email to sound? What type of tone do you want to use? In this tutorial, just to keep it simple, we do have a prompt for you to copy and paste into the LLM. However, you are free to write this however you want. If you wanted your email to have like a Southern accent or like use slang or be super professional, that is up to you. And what you tell the LLM is what it will do. So what we have in our workflow copy and paste info is a very good system prompt. You assign the LLM to be a professional customer support assistant for Acme, and then they're known for clear, friendly, and accurate information. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the prompt into this system. This is directly from our copy and paste doc. If you want to read this over, feel free to do that. It's pretty straightforward. Just imagine you're instructing the LLM to be a person, to be a customer support agent. What is very important to note about this prompt, though, is when you copy and paste something into the system, you do need to assign variables yourself. So if you read you're a professional customer support assistant for Acme, your task is to read the customer's emails, and then it references the variable customer email body. However, what this shows me here is that customer email body isn't connected as a variable yet. This issue happens because when you copy and paste text into the LLM system prompt, it doesn't connect the variables from the previous nodes. What we want to do instead is actually delete this and retype it ourselves. All you need to do is type one bracket and then go ahead and press the customer email body. So you can see the difference between when it was copy and pasted versus when we typed in the variable ourselves. Remember that variables are representations of something. So we want the representation of the customer email body to be inputted into this LLM in order for the LLM to actually have a good and accurate response. If we scroll down a little bit, read that the top of the context area does say that to enable context feature, we need to fill in the context variable in our system prompt. Our context variable is referenced here. It says that relevant company information is in the context variable. However, in this case, context isn't processed as a variable. Again, what we need to do is go ahead and delete context and type in one bracket. And you can see the context variable that we can directly upload into the LLM system prompt. Now this will accurately connect the context to the LLM prompt. Last thing we want to do down here is I see another variable that's not being connected. So I'm just going to follow the same process. I'm going to delete this, type one bracket, and then I want the customer's name to be used if there is a customer name inputted when the start node was ran. And if there is no name, then we'll just use like, hey there, instead of the name of the customer. As you can see, there are very specific instructions for how we want this LLM to respond in email format. And the final result should only be the email body that we want to return to the user of this workflow. Great. And then as you can see, let's take a look at the output variables once again. The output variable that we want is just this text string. So what we said for the LLM to return is only the final email body. So that is what the LLM will return. The reasoning, context, and usage are a little bit more specifics, just things that the LLM is doing behind the scenes. However, in this case, we just want the email in order to use in our response to a customer. Does anyone have any questions about the LLM? So far, no questions. Okay, perfect. So LLM, I'm just going to say, I'm going to name it generate response email for now. So that just tells us that this LLM is generating a response to the input customer request email that we previously worked with. The last thing we do want to do is just end our workflow. So what exactly we want to return to the user of this workflow after running our entire process. So again, make sure to connect nodes when you're wanting them to flow together. If you don't, you won't be able to access the previous variables. So press on the end node. And the end node is very simple. There's only one option here, and that's the output variable. What we wanted to output is the final email that is generated by the LLM in response to the customer. So I'm just going to name this variable response email. And then we can go ahead and set the variable to the text that we were previously looking at. So again, in our LLM node, the output variables were text is the final email, and reasoning and usage are the behind the scenes of the LLM. Great. So now that that is generated, once we run this workflow, it should give us the final response email that we do want to provide to the user of this workflow. And you'd imagine the user of this workflow to be someone working in customer service or someone responding to an email in the customer concerns or questions category. So let's go ahead and run this workflow. As you can see, we're just doing a test run. It gives us our 3 inputs, the customer name, which is optional, the subject of the email, which is again optional, and the customer email body. So in our workflow copy and paste information document, there are some test cases that are provided just in case you didn't want to write your own or you didn't want to figure out like what information is in the knowledge base that we can actually access and use to respond. So this is some testing that is specifically meant to access the knowledge base we uploaded previously. So the first email is an email with a subject package is not here from Megan. So we're going to go ahead and copy Megan's name. So the customer's name is provided. The subject of the email package is still not here. And the customer email body. So I'm going to copy and paste that. So the question here is, my order was supposed to arrive a couple days ago, but tracking hasn't updated since last week. Is there any way to check what's going on? And once we start this run, we should be able to see our input getting processed, and then we're determining the request of the customer. It's sorted into class 1, because you can see that this node connection is active. Then in the knowledge retrieval, we access our knowledge base. Then we use that knowledge to generate a response. And then we send in the final response as like an actual email that the Acme support team can send to Megan. So what the result was is, hi, Megan, I'm sorry for the delay in your recent order. Our fulfillment partner experienced a short disruption, but your package is now on the way. This specific line of information was in our knowledge base and was what we expected the LLM to respond with. And then also you can check your order status anytime by logging into your account. You should receive an email with tracking link once it ships. This is all information from our knowledge base, and that's how I know, yes, we're taking the correct information and generating an accurate response. Does anyone have any questions before we progress to the next test? Okay, great. Now we know that class 1 seems to be working correctly, because for this, it's obviously shipping and delivering issues. So let's test a different class to see if maybe there's some issue with class 2. So for our next test, it's return request for the wrong item, which will be in the refund return exchange class. So for return response for the next item, we have the subject of the email. We have the customer's name, which is Marcus. And then we have the customer email, which is, I received my package, but I got the wrong product. Can you help me with a return to get the correct one? So we're going to go ahead and run this again. And as you can see, the input is being processed at every node. And once the connection lights up, we see that it's moving on to the next node and the next node. Eventually at our end node, it'll return a response that we want. So, hi, Marcus, thank you for reaching out. Sorry to hear that you received the wrong product. The email then refers to the customer support email, which was in our knowledge base, and then the time that they have to return the item, as well as how the return label works. So this information, once again, was all from our knowledge base. If you wanted to reference it, feel free to do so. But this seems to be pretty accurate. Let's do one final test just in case to see if everything looks good. So we're going to go back to our input. And then for the last email, let's say that maybe we don't have a name. So we're just going to leave the name input blank. But we have a body of the email. So we're just going to go ahead and put that. And then we have the subject of the email, which is compatibility questions about PowerHub Max. So PowerHub Max would be a different product by Acme. And then this customer is concerned about buying this different product, but they want to make sure that it works with their MacBook Air. What this is going to do is hopefully sort it into the product details / compatibility class, and then work through the entire workflow to generate a good response. So let's start, and no customer name. So let's start the run. Once again, you can see it going through the different nodes, processing through the correct class, following to the knowledge retrieval, eventually being able to generate a response email, and then sending the response email back to the user, which is me in this circumstance. And I, as the Acme customer support team, can copy and paste this email about the PowerHub Max being fully compatible with the MacBook Air. So I see that all my tests are working correctly. Seems like my workflow is following through. Last thing that I can do in this circumstance is just publish this workflow officially. So we're just going to go ahead and press this publish button, and I'm going to publish update. Now, what I can do now is actually run this app on a different test. So you can go ahead and run app, which brings you to a different screen. I'm afraid I'm just sharing one screen right now, so I don't think it'll show up even if I do. But this gives you a more of a direct interface to connect with as like a user of this workflow. And that's pretty much how you build your first AI workflow. Does anyone have any questions about anything, any of the nodes, how this works, why this works, or any specifics? If not, we can always move on to, oh, I see that there is a question. Why are you not using iteration? This is a very beginner series, so we're just starting with something super simple. Do join us for our future webinars because we'll be going more in depth into the different potential possibilities of workflows. Does anyone have any other questions? Nothing? Okay, great. Thank you so much for following along with this tutorial. We have a couple of more information to share about Dify if you'd like to stay, but thank you so much for following along.
Thank you, Shani, for the tutorial. Actually, I've been walking through the whole process along with you, so far so good. So everyone, now is the open floor for the questions. Questions, feel free to send them in the chat box, and we will select a few of them to show them on the stage. Well, but before that, I have a question for Shani, is that what is your normal process of building a workflow? Like, for example, I have a task, so how can I transfer that to a workflow?
Honestly, it depends on the task. So usually with certain workflows, there are things that are more complicated or more easy. In this circumstance, it was pretty simple to start. We're just doing a simple start node and generating like the process to creating like, oh, I need knowledge retrieval. I need to get this, and then I need to finally generate the email. But I suggest for when you're starting with a completely new workflow that you don't know where to start, is just think about what exactly you need in order to get the thing that you want. So for example, if you're maybe wanting to focus on like a chatbot for your company to interact with customers directly, what information does that chatbot need? What type of chatbot do you want to do? And then how can you implement that or extract that information in order to just prompt it into the LLM and then generate something that's useful to you? So I'd say start out simple and then add more details on top. Maybe you want to integrate this chatbot into your like website right now. You'd have to look more into like how to use these workflows in application. So it just depends on the use case, but yeah. I'd say it's always good to look at the Dify docs if you have any questions, and also just feel free to reach out on our community platform if there's any issues.
Yeah, and also like for me as a non-developer, like sometimes building a workflow can be a little bit challenge. Like for example, I have to learn like some classifier variable things like that. Or do you suggest like any suggestions from you for non-developers that like getting started for building the workflow in Dify?
Honestly, I'd say it can be pretty hard to start programming straight up, but Dify has like a very easy to interact with interface that allows you to just use like click and drop menus. As you see, like connecting different nodes were pretty straightforward as well. There's a lot of tutorials on Dify's YouTube as well as in our docs to walk you through simple guides, and then you can use those guides to apply to like different situations. For example, today's workflow was about email automation. However, maybe like you can apply a similar ideology when you're working with a different solution. Take it slow and then really understand what each node does and why each node is important. And I think it comes together much more easily once you're able to visualize what you need.
Yeah. So we've got a question from Yokochi Wataru. Hope I pronounced it right. I'll show it on stage. Um, the comment says that I don't understand the logic of applying
Mhm.
question classification categories to knowledge search. The
Mhm.
system seems functional without them, so I assume they are for accuracy. Can you please explain?
Yeah, great question. So in this circumstance, our knowledge base is pretty succinct in that the files that we use were short and honestly not too detailed because this is just a mock tutorial. However, in other circumstances, maybe the knowledge is very vast. There's like 60 pages of information that we have in our knowledge base. Then we would need a question classification. So we don't need to feed all of that extra information into the LLM, if that makes sense. So you can think of the question classifier as like almost a filter to prevent any hallucinating when we use the LLM in the future. Does that answer your question? Feel free to ask me to elaborate on anything.
Mm-hmm. I saw another person from Haboom team
Mhm.
said when trigger finish. Can you please elaborate more on your question? Yeah. So
I'm
I feel
assuming,
like according to Shani, it's like using the question classification categories is helping OM to understand that in a much more clearer way, because if you given too much information or that might cost like much use of tokens or something.
you can think of the knowledge or the question classifier as just preventing the wrong information from getting fed to an LLM. For example,
Mm-hmm.
if we had in this circumstance, if we had a lot of information about like the product, but the question is about returning packages, then we don't want the information about the product to get fed into the LLM and the LLM using that information to like in part of their response because it's just unnecessary. So it just avoids giving information that we don't necessarily want in our email generated. So in this circumstance, I think it'd be possible just to do it without question classification, but in more complex workflows, this is definitely a requirement.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me because actually when I started to use knowledge retrieval part, that might give me a little bit challenge of that. But thank you, Shani. That is a very clear explanation. Well, since someone is asking about triggers, so I guess we'll move to a next part is that we will be releasing a new feature. Ta-da! So, Shani, what is trigger?
Yeah, I'd love to talk more about triggers. So as we walk through the tutorial today, it's a workflow to automate an email. However, there does need to be someone inputting the email, someone inputting the customer's name and the customer's subject. Trigger is a feature that allows the automation to happen without someone needing to constantly prompt the input. So Trigger, the focus is to allow workflows to run for themselves. And as a company that focuses really on allowing users to create these workflows and automation systems without excess programming knowledge, Dify has implemented this new feature called Trigger. It essentially is another node on Dify Cloud that allows workflows to run when something else happens outside of Dify. So for example, you can think of like an event, maybe email that Acme gets in their customer service email. And then the trigger feature would allow the cascade of the workflow to extract the information from the customer's email and then generate that response without someone needing to prompt in the input, if that makes sense. And there's a couple of different trigger nodes that we have. You can think of them as like alternate start nodes. So there's like different methods that we can use to actually trigger the workflow. But it essentially is a method to make your automation automated instead of you having to just constantly work on it.
So I feel it's like something ideal for automating repetitive tasks, and I can integrate my workflow with third-party applications to achieve automatic data synchronization and processing. I think so. Can I have multiple triggers running in parallel on a single workflow?
Yes, you can. So, but depending on what workflow you're doing, you can have multiple triggers that would cause the workflow to go. So, for example, in the picture above, there's multiple trigger events that cause the workflow to cascade. In this circumstance, it just makes it a lot easier if you're like the owner of a company or if you're a super busy person that wants like automation to happen without you having to press a single button. This trigger feature is excellent for just allowing the workflow to work without you needing to work with it.
Oh, it's kind of like sit back, relax, and let my workflow run themselves with Trigger. And actually, I've got something to share with our audience too. Uh, there are like 3 types of trigger, and yesterday I tried with the schedule triggers. As you can see, I built a personal Slack news spot that will help me to collect the information I need, which I wrote in the prompt for LLMs that search for the LM news in 24 hours and pick 3 to 5 to me with title capitalized, short description, the source name, and the source link in case I'm interested in one of them so I can click and see more details. As you can see, I set this schedule trigger. I remember I set it like daily, like every 12 a.m. And it will send the message to my Slack channel automatically. So as you can see, there are just 4 nodes, and I can visually pick up a time, and I enter the prompt, which we learned during the webinar and the LM, and connect it to Slack, and voila, everything is finished. And I believe this feature will be launched soon, so everyone please stay tuned for this feature. And I believe you will love it, and this is another new feature that brings, or I should say, a game changer for your workflow. Oh, there's one question. I see someone uh ask, sorry, I cannot pronounce your name, but I just showed your comment on the stage. So you've asked, where can I learn Dify? Okay. We provide different resources. Later, my colleague will also share this in the comment in the chat box as well. So you can go through our documentations on our official website. Besides, we also have a forum on where you can share and ask about questions on Dify. Besides, we also got the YouTube channels for you to explore. And of course, you can join our Dify 101 sessions for more beginner-friendly tutorials that we would try to share some basic concepts and notes. Then we will bring them together for a workflow. So you can also subscribe our Luma calendar as well. Yep. And besides the new features, we've also got something big to share is that there will be an affiliate program coming soon. So if you're a blogger, YouTuber, or tutorial maker, please feel free to join our affiliate program. You can create content about Dify and share it with your audience and earn recurring commission on every subscription you refer. This program will be launched soon, so stay tuned on our website. And besides, some of our colleagues are now having the tour in Europe. Meet Amplify Dify Europe Tour 2025. You can meet our teams and local partners in Paris, Oslo, Berlin, and Lisbon. Explore how agentic AI is moving from prototype to real production. My colleague will be sending this activity links in the chat box where you can click and sign up right away. So if you're interested in continuing the conversation beyond today's webinar, so join the series of upcoming sessions across Europe together with our colleagues and our local partners. And before you go, there will be an email sent from Luma automatically after this webinar. You can see the full replay link, and don't forget to scroll down for like 5 visits where you can click and tell us how you feel about this webinar. So after clicking the faces, there will be an extra information box where you can tell us your extra thought, what kind of topic you would love to see in our coming webinar, because this is just our very first Dify 101 online workshop. There'll be more coming. We would love to hear what kind of content or tutorial you would love to learn in the future. So feel free to leave your comments and tell us what you think. And thank you so much for joining us today. So before we sign off, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone for tuning in today. So we hope this was a helpful introduction to building with Dify. So Shani, do you have anything to say to our audience today?
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. And please, if you can, join us for future webinars where we dive deeper into the possibilities of Dify, as well as different creations that you could potentially make. Super excited to start this webinar series, and thank you for joining us.
Yep, and if you enjoyed the discussion and want to keep the conversation going, we'd love for you to join our community on social media. You can follow us on X, aka Twitter, LinkedIn, and also we got our official forum where you can share your work, pop up your questions, and maybe help others to build with Dify with your solutions or insights. And my colleague has dropped the links in the chat box, so please give us a follow and say hi. So once again, thank you so much for spending this lovely hour with us, and we'll see you at the next one. So goodbye, everyone, and see you soon. Happy building, happy creating with Dify. Have a nice day. Bye.